of us to double down on our efforts to successfully pass legislation to address injustice.
Are you ready to begin? Yes. Please provide a 5-second countdown.
Good morning. I call this hearing to order. A quorum is present. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. We have a number of members participating remotely today, and before we proceed, I'd like to go over some items for our members who are participating remotely. First, if you're experiencing connectivity issues, please make sure you or your staff contact our designated technical support so those issues can be resolved immediately. Members participating remotely must continue to use the video function for the duration of their participation in the hearing unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render the member unable to fully participate on camera. It is committee and subcommittee policy that members participating remotely will remain muted when not recognized, just like turning your microphone on and off during an in-person hearing. This is out of courtesy to all members on the committee and so that background noise does not interfere with another member who is recognized to speak. When you are recognized, you will need to unmute your microphone and pause for a couple seconds before speaking so that we'll be able to hear everything you say. If you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand using the WebEx raise hand function, unmute your microphone, and ask to be recognized. In order to ensure everything members say is captured on the live stream of this hearing, I ask that members pause for 2 to 3 seconds before beginning to speak. If you wish to have a document inserted into the record, please ask for unanimous consent and have your staff email the document to veteransaffairs.hearings@mail.house.gov. It will be uploaded to the committee document repository. Please keep in mind that you will need to refresh the repository page as it does not automatically update. Without objection, members will be recognized in order of committee seniority for questioning witnesses today. This will make it easier to ensure all members participating have an opportunity to be recognized. Does any member have a question about the conduct of this hearing with members participating remotely? Going once, going twice. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Today's hearing is entitled Getting Veterans Back to Work After COVID-19. All Americans are experiencing the economic downturn resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has exacerbated and magnified the cracks in our current economic system and brought us to a cyclical downturn faster than any economist could have predicted. As our economy adjusts, some careers may not return once the coronavirus is contained, while other sectors of the economy will expand. The hearing will examine federal education and employment programs along with private and local initiatives to address unemployment caused by COVID-19. Specifically, today's hearing will examine how the federal government and community leaders can help prepare our country's heroes to meet the challenge of the post-coronavirus recovery. This hearing expands on this subcommittee's previous two hearings, examining the effectiveness of the GI Bill and the VR&E program in the summer of 2019. This hearing also furthers this committee's goal to end the veteran homelessness epidemic by finding solutions to keep veterans gainfully employed during and after this public health emergency. During this pandemic, the veteran unemployment rate spiked to nearly 12% in April before dropping to 8.8% in June. We cannot quickly gloss over these numbers and their significance. The veteran unemployment rate jumped by roughly 8% in 1 month. And at the peak of veteran unemployment, there were over 1 million veterans who were unemployed. While the unemployment rates for veterans have improved since the start of the pandemic, we know that these numbers do not take into account those veterans who have left the workforce during this crisis. We also know that we face many challenges to bringing unemployment back down to pre-pandemic employment rates. As states reopen, we are starting to see that not every job that was lost is returning. We're also finding that states that reopen too quickly must ultimately endure longer shutdowns to get the situation back under control. However, some sectors of the economy, such as industries that can operate remotely, can help insulate veterans during this crisis. For example, as of May 2020, there were over 700,000 job vacancies across all levels of government and the information technology sector, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's also a stable demand for qualified professionals in the construction industry. This is especially relevant since the House passed H.R. 2, the Moving Forward Act, earlier this month, which could jumpstart the economy by rebuilding America's outdated infrastructure. These are opportunities that veterans must be made aware of and, if necessary, trained to take advantage of so that they can adjust to the new state of our economy. This brings us to why we are here today. Today's hearing will examine how VA and DOL are adapting their training and employment programs to meet the needs of the changing economy. We'll also examine what employment opportunities community leaders are providing veterans during this crisis and what hurdles they face in delivering these much-needed services. I especially look forward to gaining valuable insight on H.R. 7111, the Veterans Economic Recovery Act of 2020, a bipartisan and bicameral bill that would establish a new retraining assistance program for unemployed veterans during this crisis. We know that as the economy changes, our veteran training and employment programs also need to pivot. I look forward to hearing the testimony from our witnesses on how we can do that. I'd now like to recognize my colleague and friend, our ranking member from the great state of Florida, Mr. Bilirakis, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much. First, I want to thank our witnesses again for being present today, many in person, to testify on the very important issue of veteran unemployment. I'm sorry about that. It is great to be back in Washington, D.C., even though it's hotter here than it is in Florida, believe it or not. Doing our part, we must do our part to help continue the conversation about how we can help veterans emerge safely from this crisis. Before I discuss today's topic, I'd like to take a moment and thank and recognize the thousands of VA and DOL employees who are working tirelessly to assist veterans all across the country who are impacted by COVID-19. These employees have really stepped up and have rapidly changed processes and procedures to meet the needs of veterans. My thanks to all of you for your hard work. Mr. Chairman, while COVID-19 has impacted each of us in different ways, I believe that as we continue to safely reopen our economy, we can also only begin, the impact it will have on veteran employment is so very important, and I'm so happy that the chairman called this hearing today because we must address this. It should be a priority here in this committee, and it is. Recently, unemployment numbers from June estimated 776,000 veterans are unemployed, a rate of 8.8%. While these numbers are significantly better than the non-veteran population, I still have significant concerns about where we can go from here to help get our heroes back to work. A recent study by the Brookings Institute found that 42% of all jobs that have been lost during the COVID-19 pandemic will be lost permanently, unfortunately. This means there is a potential for significant reallocation of the industries that will have open jobs in our economy for some time. With statistics such as these, Congress must work to empower and retrain unemployment veterans to find new and meaningful employment in a new post-COVID economy. It's a tough task, but we must do it. And this is actually, you never know. I mean, this may be a little bit of a blessing where we need to train our veterans quickly to get a head start. So that is why Dr. Rowe, Chairman Levin, other members of the committee, and I recently introduced H.R. 711, 3 ones, the Veterans Economic Recovery Act of 2020. Senator Moran and Senator Tester, they work very well together in the Senate as well, Mr. Chairman, as you know, have also introduced a companion to this bill in the Senate. This bipartisan bill would create a new rapid retraining program that would allow unemployed veterans to go back to school or receive training to learn a new skill set that will allow them to find meaningful employment. Those eligible for this retraining program would be unemployed veterans between the ages of 25 and 60. The reason we limited this program to this age group is that this population accounted for 67% of the unemployed veterans in the country last month. I believe by offering this retraining assistance, it would be giving veterans an alternative to long-term unemployment by putting them on the pathway to rapid reemployment. This will help them bridge the gap between their old job and one that will hopefully provide them and their families a better opportunity to succeed without government assistance. The bill also includes provisions that would improve the Vet Tech program and provisions from legislation that Chairman Levin and I introduced that would help improve the transition process for separating service members. It's so important. While I know this bill is on the docket for the full committee legislative hearing on Thursday, I'm interested to hear our witnesses' views on H.R. 31s and see how we can improve the bill to maximize its potential in getting unemployed veterans back to work. Mr. Chairman, I believe our bill has the potential to help thousands of unemployed veterans, and I ask all members to join and support our efforts to have it included in the next COVID package that is currently being drafted. Finally, I'd like to welcome Assistant Secretary Lowry from DOL Vets. I know this is your first time testifying, sir, and we spoke on the phone, and I know you're doing a great job, so we appreciate that on behalf of our veterans. I'm eager to hear about your ideas to improve the department's unemployment programs. Most importantly, I'm hoping that you can share what you're doing to better track veteran outcomes from the services provided by DOL vets. I believe that the COVID economic crisis presents vets with an opportunity to revitalize and modernize the services they provide to meet the needs of veterans in the new economy. That's the bottom line. From my conversations with the Secretary, I believe he is up to the task, and I look forward to hearing from him about his plans to improve programs, particularly the Jobs for Veterans State Grant Program. Again, I thank our witnesses for being here today to discuss the very important topic, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Well, I thank the ranking member and thank him for his continued work on a bipartisan basis. And I thank the powers that be for giving us a good bill number, right? 7111. Can't go wrong. I'll now introduce our witnesses that we have on our first panel. It's good to see you all. From the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, we have Ms. Margarita Devlin, Principal Undersecretary for Benefits. Thank you so much. And from the U.S. Department of Labor, we have Mr. John Lowry, Assistant Secretary of the Veterans Employment and Training Service. Good to have you here, sir. And I'd like to now yield to General Bergman to introduce the Assistant Secretary. General.
You know, thank you, Chairman. We don't often get a chance to say publicly how we feel about someone. As Marines, we don't really feel. We think and we act. But I'm gonna do a little very quickly here. My staff was kind enough to write up something formal. So let me read that. President Trump nominated John Lowry to be the Assistant Secretary for Veterans Employment and Training, and he was sworn in by Secretary Scalia on January 6, 2020. Mr. Lowry is a Marine Corps veteran who served 15 years on active duty and an additional 10 years in the Marine Corps Reserve. His last reserve assignment was as the commanding officer of 4th Marine Division's Headquarters Battalion, while I was the commanding general of Marine Forces Reserve. In his private sector career, Mr. Lowry held leadership roles at Harley-Davidson, the Allied Recreation Group, and Egan Zender, a graduate of Princeton, Stanford, Harvard, and the U.S. Army War College. Mr. Lowry's education and experience enable him to provide valued leadership to veterans across Department of Labor. That's the written word. As I knew him then, Colonel Lowry was one of the most thoughtful, proactive leaders that, whether it be Marines, sailors, civilians, I even got feedback from the folks who worked at Harley-Davidson. What a great leader you were up there in Wisconsin, because people wanted to come to work for John Lowry. It's not a regret, because God has a plan for all of us. I wanted John to be a general officer in the Marine Corps Reserve, and I couldn't talk him out of going back to the private sector and dedicating his time to lead in the private sector. So with that, I am so proud of you, Colonel Assistant Secretary Lowry. Now you get one of those really long titles here, but fellow Marine, glad you're here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Well, thank you so much, General, and thank you again to the Assistant Secretary. Very much appreciate having you here. Now I'd like to hear from the panel members, their prepared statements. I'll remind you to please pause for 2 to 3 seconds before speaking so that the recording will capture all of your words. And please remember to do so when answering members' questions as well. Your written statements in full will be included in the hearing record. And with that, I now recognize Ms. Devlin for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Levin, Ranking Member Bilirakis, and other members of the subcommittee. I'm pleased to be here today accompanied by Charmaine Bogue, Executive Director of VBA's Education Service, to discuss the topic of how the Department of Veterans Affairs is supporting veterans with their employment and career goals as the country adjusts to the pandemic. We all acknowledge that the employment landscape is precarious for many during these uncertain times. VA's challenge during this fast-moving crisis was to continue to be a trusted, accessible resource for our transitioning service members, veterans, and their families. Now more than ever, veterans are relying on us for the benefits and resources necessary for their well-being. VA adapted swiftly to the challenges faced during COVID-19. We've been flexible and innovative, and we did not skip a beat in taking care of our nation's heroes. We've adjusted our operations to continue to ensure maximum protections are in place for veterans to stay safe while continuing to apply for and receive their benefits. Although VBA had to close our physical regional office buildings to the public for everyone's safety, our dedicated employees have continued to work in a virtual environment to ensure to continue delivering benefits. Within VBA, there are several programs that support veterans in preparing for, obtaining, and maintaining productive employment. We provide education and training benefits to ensure veterans have the skills and credentials to compete for a job. We offer outreach and personalized career counseling to ensure they have the support and guidance to select the right education and career paths. We provide employment services, and we deliver military to civilian transition support. We also offer support for home purchases, which is a cornerstone of the American dream. VBA partners with the Department of Labor and other stakeholders on military and veteran-focused employment events. And most importantly, we conduct targeted recruitment and we hire veterans, as evidenced by the fact that more than 50% of VBA's employees are veterans themselves. My written testimony contains more details about VBA's programs supporting veteran employment and our response to COVID-19. In the interest of time, I will focus my statement on just a few examples. In response to COVID-19, our newly renamed Veteran Readiness and Employment Service immediately expanded the use of telecounseling to continue providing services to program participants without interruption. VRE is also expanding employment services through the creation of national and local labor market profiles that will be used to match job-ready veterans with available employment opportunities. VRE service also expanded its successful partnership with Department of Labor to include a collaboration focusing on increasing the use of apprenticeship within the VRE program. VBA's education service has adapted in response to COVID-19 related challenges as well and has continued delivering timely benefits. As you know, the post-9/11 GI Bill is the most utilized of VBA's education programs. It's a powerful tool to prepare student veterans for meaningful careers in today's economy. Another popular program with veterans is the Veteran Employment Through Technology Education Courses, or VET-TECH, a pilot program that helps veterans advance in an information technology career. VET-TECH is extremely popular because veterans complete training and enter the job market more rapidly. Due to the demand of the program, the VA has exhausted the annual budget cap. We still encourage veterans to apply for their eligibility, but no new veterans can enroll until we can access the fiscal year 21 funds in October. VBA's Office of Transition and Economic Development oversees VA's Transition Assistance Program, which provides courses on VA benefits to more than 180,000 transitioning service members per year. Due to COVID-19, VA's TAP courses are being provided virtually using DoD's Joint Knowledge Online. In addition, VBA benefit advisors continue to provide virtual one-on-one assistance. Our newest program, Solid Start, launched in December 2019. Solid Start provides early and consistent caring contact to transitioning service members by calling them at 3 intervals during that first year after separation. Solid Start representatives engage in discussions that are driven by the veterans on areas of interest to them. In response to the changing employment landscape for transitioning service members, VBA collaborated with DOL to incorporate additional employment-related resources into the program. VBA also offers education and vocational counseling through telecounseling. VBA is in the process of renaming and modernizing this program, but it is available now for any interested transitioning service member or student veteran. The program will be rebranded as Personalized Career Planning and Guidance Program later this fall. VBA appreciates the swift action by Congress that allowed us to continue and/or extend benefit payments to veterans participating in education and VRE who were impacted by how schools had to adjust to the pandemic. VA is committed to providing the support necessary to ensure veterans and their families are positioned to achieve and maintain economic stability now and in the aftermath of the pandemic. This concludes my statement, Mr. Chairman. We are prepared to answer any questions you or other members of the committee may have.
Thank you, Ms. Devlin. I now will recognize Mr. Lowry for 5 minutes, and I know they're going to call votes pretty soon. So after Mr. Lowry's opening statement and before our questions, we'll go ahead and take a break for votes, and then we'll come back. So, Mr. Lowry, with that, your opening statement.
Chairman Levin, Ranking Member Bilirakis, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony for this important hearing focused on getting veterans back to work after COVID-19. And General Bergman, thank you so much, sir, for your kind and generous introduction. I commend the subcommittee for its efforts to promote economic opportunities for America's veterans through these challenging times. Rapid change defines the nation's experience with the coronavirus. In a single month, we went from record low unemployment to record high unemployment filings. But now, as recent job reports illustrate, rapid change is once again trending in a positive direction. The Department of Labor is working closely with our federal and state partners to help workers, including our veterans, make the transition to the workforce and into a once again thriving economy. It's been an honor to lead the Veterans and Employment and Training Service for these past 6 months. I have been truly impressed by the talented and committed VETS team. The vision of VETS is to enable all veterans to reach their full potential in the workplace. Living up to the full potential doesn't mean just getting a job. It means maximizing the value of one's unique capabilities. By focusing on the military to civilian transition process and harnessing America's collective support for our veterans, we can help our veterans reach their full potential. Achieving this vision not only helps veterans, their families, and the organizations they serve, but it's also good for America's prosperity and security. Veterans embody one of the most capable and resilient talent pools in the nation, and they will help rebuild our economy. Prior to the COVID-19 crisis, the contribution of veterans in the American economy reached an historic milestone. Unemployment among veterans fell to 3.1% in 2019, the lowest annual veteran unemployment rate since 2000. While the recent jump in the unemployment rate due to the impact of COVID-19 is alarming, the employment data from last month, as we noted, Chairman, in your opening statements and Ranking Member, provided strong proof of the value of veterans in the workplace. In June, the veteran unemployment rate was 8.8%. The non-veteran unemployment rate was 11.1%. It's clear that America's employers understand the value of veterans in the workforce. When our nation faces crises, we turn to the United States military and to those who have served for their leadership skills and resilience. Many have likened the COVID-19 pandemic to war, and in some ways, the analogy is fitting. On the battlefield, military units with the agility to improvise, adapt, and overcome put the odds in their favor. For businesses attempting to succeed in the COVID-19 operating environment, the ones that pivot and adapt the quickest will emerge in the best position. Veterans spend formative years learning how to excel in challenging and dynamic environments, and they will help us win this war. The Department is working with the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, interagency partners, and state workforce agencies to take all necessary actions to combat COVID-19 while keeping our service members, veterans, and their families safe and their economic prospects intact. VETS is part of a strong network of government and non-governmental organizations serving our military veterans and their families with well-coordinated resources. VETS aims to leverage this collective energy to the advantage of the military community and the American economy. VETS' ability to conduct its mission throughout the pandemic has not been compromised, and its transition to remote work was nearly seamless while helping to identify areas of IT-related improvement. As more and more Americans are given the all-clear to return to work safely, many veterans who were temporarily unemployed will return to their previous employers. For those veterans who have not been able to return to work, VETS is using information technology to drive how we conduct business and deliver services, as well as provide the data needed to make policy decisions that are evidence-based and driven by the needs of our customers. Again, thank you for providing a forum to discuss this important issue, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lowry. Before I go any further, I wanted to wish Dr. Rowe a very happy birthday. Thank you for your service to our country and to our committee. And the vote was called, so we'll go ahead and take a quick break and we'll vote, and then we'll come back. Thank you very much.
Begin.
Ready to begin?
Please provide a 5-second countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. We're going to have eventually another vote here, but we'll get through as much as we can right now. And I'd like to begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes for questions. Just a quick reminder to my colleagues who are remote that members should pause 2 to 3 seconds before speaking so that all of your questions are captured. Ms. Devlin, I'd like to turn to you first. Is VA checking in on veterans once they complete or drop out of training or employment programs to determine whether they obtained employment, maintain their employment after 90 days, need additional support, or are aware of other benefits and programs they qualify for?
Thank you for that question. Yes, participants in the Veteran Readiness and Employment Program are contacted, and we stay in touch with them for a minimum of 60 days after they achieve suitable employment. But now, thanks to the passage of the law that allows us to pay them an extra 2 months of subsistence allowance, we are now following them for a minimum of 4 months. And in that time period, we ask them how they're doing, we see if they need any assistance, and we provide any supportive services they might need to make sure that they're stable. And then after they are declared rehabilitated, where we would typically stop responding to them, we will send them another follow-up letter in 6 months just to check in on them once again and make sure that they're okay.
Thank you for that answer. Obviously, the COVID pandemic has magnified the importance of internet access. Is VA gauging, how many veterans have access to high-speed broadband?
We don't broadly do that. However, with each individual veteran participating in a program, again, I'm referring to the VRNE program where we can pay for and provide services. We can determine any needs that they have to be successful in their program. However, that's only specific to the VRNE program and not to other education programs.
Got it. Mr. Lowry, wanted to turn to you. How is DOL ensuring that veterans and eligible spouses are receiving priority of service at American Job Centers across the nation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. As you know, sir, when the COVID-19 pandemic began in earnest, a lot of the American Job Centers had to toggle over to providing virtual services. We have been supporting that effort through our National Veterans Training Institute that provides training to all the Jobs for Veterans state grant staff inside the American Job Centers. And it's been variable from state to state, but what we are doing through NVTI, our training institute, is to share best practices across the various states and also partnering with the National Association of State Workforce Agencies to, again, share the best practices so that we are providing priority services to the veterans who need it. I would not say that it's universally successful in every occasion, but as we continue to mine the lessons learned and then spread them across the network, we're seeing improvements kind of month over month.
Thank you for that. And is there a mechanism in place to measure veteran satisfaction with the services provided at American Job Centers?
It's a little bit variable, again, because of these are state staffs and they have state protocols. But again, we leverage the National Association Workforce Agencies to figure out, okay, which states are doing the best job on understanding how we're meeting the needs of the veterans, and then trying to replicate that across the other states.
DOL has partnerships with other government entities to provide veterans and transitioning service members with apprenticeship and on-the-job training programs. To what extent are these opportunities disclosed and discussed in the DOL portion of the Transition Assistance Program?
Thank you, Chairman. To a great extent. In fact, right now we have launched a pilot this year where we're providing apprenticeship coordinators. APC is the acronym. I can't remember exactly what the P stands for, but basically helping to vector service members who are going through transition to one of the 300 plus registered apprenticeships that we have in the Department of Labor. So we know that starting salary for your average apprentice is about $70,000 a year, and that's a great outcome for transitioning service members. So we are trying to push that as much as possible.
Well, thank you very much, and I really just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing right now. It's already very important, but particularly in the midst of this pandemic, and hearing as I do from many veterans in our local community in San Diego and Orange County, I know how this has impacted so many. So your work now is more important than ever. And Mr. Lowry, Assistant Secretary Lowry, you've had so many distinguished things that you've done, and this assignment is definitely not going to be easy, but I know you're going to be up to it, so I thank you very much for it. With that, I'd now like to turn to my friend, the ranking member, for his questions.
Appreciate it very much. Secretary Lowry, as the economy continues to recover from COVID-19, what role do you see the American Job Centers playing in helping veterans find employment, especially for younger veterans who may shy away from the traditional face-to-face meetings and other services provided by AJCs?
Thank you, Ranking Member. I appreciate the question. The American Job Centers play a critical role. It is a tool. It's not the only tool. So the American Job Center may not be for every veteran, but last year alone, the American Job Centers served over 250,000 of the veterans. And then more specifically to veterans who have a significant barrier to employment, we have disabled veteran outreach program representatives in all 50 states and 2 territories that provide one-on-one intensive services for those individuals. And last year we had 79,000 of them were served in the American Job Centers. We see that continuing, and we know that the services provided at the American Job Centers do correlate to unemployment. And so as unemployment is higher now than it was last year, we would expect that there would be an increased demand for those services. And we are working with the state workforce agencies to make sure that we're going to be positioned to meet that demand.
How, just to follow up here, and then I also want to ask as far as awareness, how do you promote these AJCs? And then the follow-up is, do you see the current economic situation as an opportunity to refocus jobs for veterans, the state grant program, to help provide employment services that may be better meet the needs of today's veterans? And I know that, you know, the VA, we worked on the VRAP program with Dr. Rowe. The VA is ahead of the game. So, you know, I know that you'll be successful, even though it's a very difficult task, but it's a necessary task. So if you could answer that question as far as awareness, and then if you could also respond to the follow-up that I have.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Again, appreciate the question. So the American Job Centers are a great resource for 2 types of veterans, the existing veteran and the soon-to-be veteran, the transitioning service member who may not know exactly what they want to do as they exit the service. So through the Transition Assistance Program, if we do not help narrow that focus in for that service member before they reach the end of active service, they are vectored in a warm handoff directly into that American Job Center. And from there, they'll continue to receive the service. And then for the veterans at large, we get the word out not only through our own website, but through a myriad of partners that the agency partners with, including the Veterans Administration, who we work very closely with on all matters of veteran employment, to take advantage of virtual platforms to make sure that the veterans who need the help get vectored into those American Job Centers.
Thank you. I guess I have a little over a minute, so I'll ask the next question for Secretary Lowry and Ms. Devlin. Are there any legislative authorities or additional funding that your departments need to assist transitioning? So if you need any additional appropriation, transitioning service members or unemployed veterans during the COVID-19 crisis?
At this moment, no, sir. We do, however, have two pilots going on. The one I alluded to earlier, the apprenticeship pilot, as well as an employment navigator pilot that I'm happy to speak about more later. If those programs gain the traction and demonstrate the efficacy that we believe they will, we may be coming back for resources, but at this time, none for the Department of Labor.
Ms. Devlin, please.
Thank you, Ranking Member, for asking that question. We've been very fortunate to be able to seek funding and obtain funding in our fiscal 20 and 21 budgets for the Transition Assistance Program for VA, including some special programs that we will be implementing, such as the Women's Health Training Pilot, which VHA started as a pilot initiative with the Air Force. It was successful. They went to the other military branches, and after it demonstrated success, we are now incorporating it into our full portfolio. And so I would say we do not need additional funding at this time that we have not already asked for. And then just one other note about Vet Tech. As I mentioned before, we did already go through all of the fiscal 20 funding, just for your consideration.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank the ranking member. I'd like to recognize gentleman from New Hampshire, Mr. Pappas, for his questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our panel for your work on behalf of our veterans at such a crucial moment. We can't leave any veteran behind, and I know you're all focused on the work ahead in a really challenging environment. Ms. Devlin, I was wondering if I could start with you. The Veteran Readiness and Employment Program has done so many positive things to assist disabled veterans and allow them to find meaningful employment. Last year, we had a hearing in this subcommittee and heard testimony that VR&E counselors spend 60% of their time on administrative work rather than providing direct assistance to veterans. We also heard that at the time, the ratio of counselors to students was 1 to 122, which, while technically under the congressionally mandated ratio, is still quite high. These statistics were problematic before COVID. Now, with veterans losing their jobs at high rates, it will be even more critical for us to provide them with quality service. Can you elaborate on what VA is doing to ensure that VR&E is adequately staffed? And are there any additional resources you think will be needed as this pandemic continues to move forward and we see impacts on economic opportunities for individuals?
Absolutely. I'm happy to address that. We do recognize the importance of the VR&E program, especially in this time period. So I'll talk about a few things. The case management solution, which is a new case management tool that we've been working on. I'll tell you, we are on time and on budget to deliver on our promises to provide our counselors with the kind of case management solution they need to more effectively and efficiently manage their caseloads to take care of their veterans. This summer, later this summer, they will be doing user acceptance testing, and in November, we will be piloting the minimally viable solution with our counselors in a few stations. So that's exciting news. It's built for data. It'll help us to analyze our program better and our successes. With respect to the ratio, we are under the 1 to 125, and in the 21 budget, we did anticipate that we will be drawing down some need for FTE in the appeals area as we've drawn down our legacy appeals, and we have promised to put up to 166 staff into counselor positions as we see the workload increase. And we do anticipate that we will see a workload increase in that area. The other thing is the invoice payment processing system. Before this system, it was a very manual, very archaic, very labor-intensive system that counselors had to go through just to pay invoices for all their veterans' tuition and books and supplies. That is now automated. The schools can send in the invoice in an automated manner through technology, and we pay it in an automated manner. Schools are getting paid faster. Counselors have less administrative burden. We're paying 90-something%, just under 100% in less than 30 days.
Okay, thanks for those comments. So last year we were bumping up against that 1 to 125 ratio, but because of COVID, we haven't risen any higher. Is that correct?
We applied some FTE over the years as we see the workload increasing, and we also applied $3 million in contracting funds to help mitigate the staffing situation to make sure that we could level the playing field for our counselors across the nation.
Well, thanks for your work. Mr. Lowry, you noted an upcoming apprenticeship pilot program that links DOL, DOD, and VA, and I think that's an exciting opportunity. I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on what this program will look like and how it's different from existing programs like SkillBridge.
Thank you, Congressman. Appreciate the question. What the program looks like right now is we have apprenticeship placement coordinators. That's the acronym I was thinking about on 2 installations for the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. So the Army is at Fort Bragg, Fort Bliss, Nellis and Travis in the Air Force, San Diego, and Norfolk for the Navy, as well as Miramar and Cherry Point for the Marine Corps. So large installations, and we think that's a measure. The fact that the DoD was interested in piloting in those locations is a measure of the enthusiasm. This is a different program in that SkillBridge doesn't necessarily lead to a journeyman's card. SkillBridge is often focused to a particular company. Now, there are trade organizations like Veterans in Piping, which is a great SkillBridge program that could lead to a journeyman's card. But the apprenticeship pilot is specific to apprenticeships and can be applied. Someone who graduates from this program has a broader palette of possible employment outcomes than someone who is going through SkillBridge, who typically is going to get vectored into a certain direction. So we look at it as very, very complementary. And we also believe that someone who goes to an apprenticeship pilot coordinator in this pilot, if it turns out that maybe the SkillBridge path is more suitable, we'll certainly vector them there. So the idea is we want to get veterans or soon-to-be veterans connected to the avenue that makes the most sense for them, sir.
Well, thanks for the explanation. We look forward to hearing more about how the pilot is going. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. Now I'd like to recognize General Bergman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of you witnesses. Just seeing Mr. Lowry here reminded me of my time in uniform when I was sitting down there testifying before numerous committees and subcommittees, and never thinking I would be up here at some point. But the number one thing I remember is that sitting down there, I know that you all have put a tremendous amount of time and effort into your testimony, and I thank you for that. And it's incumbent upon us as the members of Congress to ask relevant questions and have relevant dialogue, regardless, of an political ideology. And I'm proud of the Veterans Affairs Committee that, by and large, still represents a bipartisan manner in which we do our business here. So, just thank you for all the effort you put in preparation. Mr. Lowry, it seems so weird to call you Mr. Lowry. Okay. It's been said that when the nation's economy sneezes, the state of Michigan catches cold. Because of who we are in our history, especially in automotive, in mining, in all those things, and I'm optimistic from what I'm seeing here that this analogy is not going to play out in the seemingly extreme times. And when I say extreme times, 100 years ago, our ancestors were going through just a couple of minor things. And I say that facetiously because I know it could be used against me. World War I, Spanish pandemic. But I am optimistic because we have good people like you all trying to do the right things for the right reason. Having said that, my district, as well as several districts here across the country, are rural and remote. And when we think about the planning for employment after service, how do we, through programs that all of you administrate, ensure that the maximum usage of that program to make that transition is available to veterans who live in rural and remote areas that are challenged with everything from the availability of a cell signal to the availability of high-speed broadband. Would you give me an idea of what you're doing that is going to translate into that rural and remote nature to help those vets?
Thank you, General, for the question. One of the benefits, if you can say that, of enduring this COVID-19 crisis that we're in is that we are getting smarter on how to leverage technology. But as you said, there are plenty of areas that may not even have the bandwidth, or we may be trying to reach people that don't have the hardware to connect. And so there we're seeing that the best solution is going to be not being territorial in our thinking, not thinking that this is going to be something that's going to be exclusively solved by either the United States government or the state of Michigan, but leveraging the full the full power of all of our partners. And I know you're going to hear from Hiring Our Heroes, Helmets to Hard Hats, and Reboot shortly after this. Those are three great representative examples of organizations that we can leverage to help reach hard to reach places. And that's why we only have two priorities at VETS. One is we got to get the transition right for the compounding benefits that will provide over someone's career. But the other one is we have to have the right strategic partners to maximize the impact for the veteran. And when we're talking about all veterans and those remote veterans, and so getting out of territorial thinking, I think, is a good way to do that, sir.
Great. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, General. Now I'd like to recognize Ms. Lee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for all of your work on behalf of veterans, especially during this challenging time. Ms. Devlin, I'm happy to hear from your testimony that the VRNE, your services employment team, has instituted a monthly collaboration with field offices to determine the best practices for preparing veterans for employment during and after COVID-19. These 56 offices, I'm sure, are the most knowledgeable for what is best for their veterans in their specific regions. And given the regional disparities that we're seeing now across this country with COVID-19, as you start to open more in-person trainings, are you pursuing, how are you managing that? Are you pursuing a more blanketed national approach, or are you opening field offices on a case-by-case basis within regions?
Thank you for the question. We are taking, of course, every precaution and following the gating criteria to determine when our offices can go into phase 1 and phase 2 and then eventually phase 3. As of this time, we only have 2 offices that have gone into phase 2, Roanoke, Virginia, and Fargo, North Dakota. As we go into phase 2, that's where we consider bringing in up to 25% of our employees into the building. But I will just want to mention that during this whole time, we've been working in a telework status, and our veterans have risen to the challenge of connecting with us through our telecounseling technology. If you look at how many telecounseling appointments VRNE did in fiscal year 19, it was 18,500. And so far in fiscal year 20, it's 68,907. So we are continuing to work and operate even in the pandemic.
Great, thank you. I think that our transition towards all sorts of telecommuting, telework is really, unfortunately, the silver lining of this pandemic. Mr. Lowry, the transition program, TAP program, obviously you've been able to employ a lot of telecommuting with respect to that. What are you seeing as lessons learned that could then be transferred over post-COVID?
Thank you, Congresswoman. I think one of the lessons learned is that this is a capability, this virtual capability that we want to retain and exercise even post-COVID, because there are some installations that are very small that may not be resourced as well as some of the big installations that I talked about before, that frankly are getting a better experience potentially now where they're virtually able to plug into a larger, more established type of a training assistance program. So we intend to keep this capability. I don't know exactly where we're going to land, but probably 10% or so of the transition systems we provide going forward will be on the virtual platform. So that was one of the bigger lessons. I think the other lesson was we're still not at 100% of hitting all the people that would normally be through TAP at this time of the year. So we created a little bit of backlog when we hit the switch and shut down all the brick and mortar and toggled over to the virtual capability, which only took a matter of a couple of weeks. The services were vectoring some people on to just doing an online, not a virtual interactive, but a sort of a static joint knowledge online program. And while that's satisfactory, I don't know if it's necessarily optimal. So we lost a little bit of time, and we've been working now very closely with the services to actually, work through the backlog, get those people through the virtual experience. But I think, in hindsight, maybe a little bit better coordination across between the services and our TAP administration pushing the services would have helped.
Great, thank you very much. I agree. I think that there's endless opportunity here with respect to use of virtual capabilities. And, I've heard from several service members, veterans in my community, obviously challenges with the TAP program. And so being able to identify those opportunities, I think, is a great opportunity. So thank you, Mr. Lowry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. I'd now like to recognize Mr. Muser for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Thank you all very much for being here and for your service to our veterans and to our country. Ms. Devlin, Ms. Bogue, appreciate everything you do. Mr. Lowry. So related to veterans VA purchasing and how that relates to domestic manufacturing, the VA over the years has had requirements for certain percentages of product to be made in America in order for the Veterans Administration in order for them to be eligible. Are those standards still in effect? I understand it used to be 50%, 60%. I'm just not sure. And if not, what is the eligibility criteria, and are you going to be considering increasing that in order to perhaps encourage more domestic manufacturing?
Thank you, Congressman. I will defer to my colleagues from the VA on that question.
Sir, as we don't have anybody from our acquisitions department here, I can't answer that question for you, but I can take it for the record and we can get that back to you.
Yeah, I'd be very interested because I do know in years back, I think it was quite strict, and I'm just concerned, hoping actually that it still is, and maybe should even be ramped up, particularly on what the crisis we just went through and these certain critical products. Okay, and there's no question that over the last several years, U.S. domestic supply chains have become much more competitive as resources for components as well as finished product. And I would hope as well, as the Veterans Administration tends to do, it sets an example for the rest of the federal government on directions that can take place, a transition towards it at the very least.
Yes, if I may, I would comment that we do have goals in the VA to acquire a certain percentage of our acquisitions through small and veteran-owned businesses. I'm sorry that I don't have the answer to your question about the American-made products, but we do prioritize veteran-owned businesses.
That'd be great. Yes, I'm aware of that, and that's terrific. So, Mr. Lowry, I'll move on to informational technologies and your use of that, I understand, for connecting veterans with opportunities within the private sector or public sector. How's that going? Are you behind? Are you involved in expanding it and making the right investments?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. It is going well from the perspective that we're learning. So as I said in my opening statement, we had a couple of hiccups, I would say, over the first couple of weeks till we landed on the right platforms, and we worked very closely with the Department of Defense, particularly to reach those soon-to-be veterans. And they were very supportive of us and helped push our agency to get MS Teams, which is the dominant platform we use with the Department of Defense, and that's worked very effectively. Also, for the veteran population who's not still in service, who's already made that transition, we are working through our partners, both our state partners as well as some non-governmental partners, to figure out how do we get technology into the hands who need it the most. And of course, the most concerning population are those people that are either homeless or on the path to homeless, because they're the ones obviously with less means. So some of our homeless veteran reintegration program grantees are actually partnering with some of their local partners to provide technology for veterans.
Well, keep it up. I was Secretary of Revenue in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and one thing I found, they were woefully behind in information technologies, as is frankly most state and federal agencies, I believe. The private sector has advanced enormously there, and the return on investment is virtually immediate. Within 2 years, I was receiving 3-to-1 returns on investments for such investments, so it's a good thing. And real quick on telehealth, are you utilizing any of that for employment, but not telehealth, but virtual meetings and Zoom calls in order to provide a better ease of connectivity for employment opportunities?
I know that in the state workforce agencies, so our JVSG grantees, they are using that, not universally, but in many of the states, and they're looking to expand that capability.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Musert. Now, never mind. Be careful. Any other members? All right, if there are no other members that have questions at this time, we can switch to our second panel. I'd like to very much thank our first panel. You're now excused, and we'll call up the second panel, and we'll take just a brief recess while we set that up.